Hello there.
Not a lot of us here today.
No, it's Independence Day. And going to make a co-host. And
Co-host, yay.
yay! Okay, so I'm not going to record this because it is flowing to YouTube and Facebook and Circle. So between those, I don't have to take up space on my computer. So wanted to say hello and welcome to the Independence Day version of Lifewriting Live. And I am your host, Steve Barnes, and my co-host, the lovely and talented Tananarive Dew. And
Ah,
when she is ready
when my face
to
is
come
ready.
online, you can come on. But I wanted to read something from one of my favorite movies that was a game-changing film. It was Independence Day with Will Smith. There was a little seismic shift that happened with that movie, and I think that we all remember, all of us seen it, remember the scene where he stirs the troops. You know, the St. Crispin's Day speech in the movie, and it goes like this: President Thomas Whitmore says, "Good morning. In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world, and you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind." Mankind. That word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We will be united in our common interests. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July and you will once again be fighting for our freedom, not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution, but from annihilation. We are fighting for our right to live, to exist. And should we win the day, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but as the day the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We are going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our independence. I loved that. And I'm inviting each and every one of you to declare your independence from the chains of the past, from everything that has happened to you that ever told you you were less than the conqueror who can build the kingdom of your dreams. I want you to invite that because, well, for a lot of different reasons, but something extraordinary has happened in my life and in Tananari's life. As soon as my baby can turn her camera on, I'm going to turn this over to her.
Give
But
me 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
okay,
I'll
I
be
will give you a few minutes. But
great.
let me tell you a joke, and it's a joke with a point. Find this properly. Okay, a priest, a minister, and a rabbi are on a fishing trip. They get out of the water. They get out on the water, and the priest goes, "Oh, darn, I forgot the picnic basket." So he proceeds to step out of the boat and walk to shore, grabs the picnic basket, and comes back to the boat. The rabbi looks on in bewilderment. The minister looks around as he's about to cast and realizes, "I forgot the tackle box." He also proceeds to get out of the boat and walk to shore, grabs the tackle box, and heads back to the boat. The rabbi is absolutely shocked at this point. Finally, the rabbi turns to the minister and priest and says, "I forgot the bait." He steps out of the boat and splashes around in the water. The priest turns to the minister and says, "You forgot to show him where the rocks are, didn't you?" Something amazing has happened. Until now, Tananarive and I have been teaching and sharing about paths that we've mastered: health and fitness, relationships, and writing, let's say. Suddenly, someone showed us where the rocks were and invited us to cross to a new land. And Tananarive and I have had a ton of conversations centering around, oh my God, we were not supposed to find these rocks. The system was not set up for us, but we're here. How the hell do we navigate this? How do we find out if we even can? You better believe that when we find the center of that storm, with fiery winds whipping around at 500 miles per hour all around us, we have to step into the center and take our family and loved ones with us, hold on to each other and say, we are that bitch. So, somewhat to our surprise, you are watching us metamorphose in real time, right in front of you. Will we manage to do it? Will we crash and burn, rise like the phoenix? Stay tuned, folks. Even we don't know how this story ends, but it's gonna be wild. We have this new challenge, being directors, finishing the short, making the feature as part of a three-picture deal, which is what my goal is. Right now, the other movies we feel like we could direct are The Reformatory and Charisma, in that order.
Yeah.
So let me turn this over to Tananarive and just allow you to jump into this.
No, you were off to a great start. Some of y'all were scared about that joke, huh? You didn't know where that was going.
Yeah, I mean it
Uh,
would possibly. There are lots of other ways that you could
there are a
do
lot
that
of ways
joke.
that joke could have gone. I was holding my breath the whole time he told me. Although
Yes, I know.
when he told me the punchline, it was maybe we should have told him where the rocks are, which I like slightly better. Because yeah, maybe someone should have told us where the rocks were 20 years ago.
Well,
Wouldn't
actually,
it have
if
been
they'd even
nice?
said this is what this is what the territory on that other side is, maybe we could have made rafts. But if they'd even said there are rocks, if you study the people who crossed that.
I have so much respect for those 20 somethings and 30 somethings. I know we have a couple, probably 30 somethings on this call who figured it out already. I saw a picture today of a young woman as a director who looked like she was a baby when she started. And I'm like, you go ahead with your bad self because someone showed her the rocks. Or at least she just, it's hard to express how, as writers, and as someone who's wanted to be a writer since I was four, and actually I would say was a writer since I was four, because I was writing, and that's my definition
That's
of
right.
what a
Because me,
writer
as
is.
far basically, you've always wanted to be a writer.
Yeah, I've always been a writer. So as someone, it was my goal was the written word and how far can I spread my stories through the written word. And screenwriting was attractive to me mostly as a way to sort of disseminate my books at a wider level, because more people watch movies than read the books very often. So it was always just a strategy to expand people's awareness of my work or maybe the joy of seeing an adaptation one day. But it did not dawn on me that I wanted to direct for a very, very, very long time. The first person who said the words to me, you should direct, were Ava DuVernay. She was Ava DuVernay. And this was maybe I want to say 8 years ago, 10 years ago. But again, she was giving me a vision without showing me the rocks. You know what I mean? Or I think a lot of people expect that it is such a difficult industry to navigate that if you can't find the rocks, you're not gonna make it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. But and then Shutter, Sam Zimmerman, who's over at Shutter, had made the comment about, you should direct The Keeper. And I thought it was going to lead to a larger conversation, like, and we will fund you. But it wasn't. It was like, again, here's this beautiful idea. Good luck with that idea. Go get it. And that's fair. It is very much an industry about go get it. It is a gift if someone just puts a notion in your head, frankly. And we were just talking about our guardian angel today, and it's rare that we will speak about a studio executive as a guardian angel, but Giselle Johnson at Blackmail Productions has been that guardian angel. After many, 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 many years, like 5 or 6 years of The Keeper being a script sample, They got us tons of general meetings, which is just people wanting to get to know you. Is this someone I might be able to work with? Maybe we've got a project that would fit for you. I'm trying to think of, this is the only general I can think of that's really come to anything.
A general is
But
a general meeting without a specific intent. You're meeting with
yeah,
the executives and they're getting to know you and you're getting to know them.
I'm sure there has to be at least one other general that has ended up with a check or something, but I don't know what it would be, except for this one. And they were the first company after Monkey Paw, although they couldn't make it work. Blackmailed was the first company to say, we want to make this film. And further to say, and we think you two should direct it. And again, it was a nice idea for a long time until that same executive said, I found a short film contest, write a short film adaptation of The Keeper to direct, and that's our proof of concept to make the feature. She was showing us the rocks.
See, and the notion here, the biggest problem people have is looking at a gap between where they are and, like, you're on one bluff and then there's another bluff and everything you want is there and it's too far to jump. Somebody's got to teach you how to build a bridge or build a hot air balloon or something, or you have to search until you find a bluff that is short enough that you can jump across. It's feeling that you have to eat. If you can't eat the elephant in one bite, you can't eat the elephant at all. Whereas the truth is somebody shows you how to break the elephant up into bite-sized chunks and helps you take one bite every day. Eventually the elephant will be eaten. I see that. People say, I don't know how to recognize flirting, okay, as a step towards being able to find a relationship, a marriage. And so if you say, the first step in the magic formula, to find a role model, somebody who is good at flirting, and talk to them about what are the signs of flirting. That starts the discussion. It's not the end of the discussion, it's the beginning of it. But they will then say, well, what happens if they do this and I do that and they misunderstand this, and how do you build it to that? They're trying to eat the whole elephant at one time. 30 years ago, more, 30, maybe 40 years ago, somebody first said to me, do you want to direct? I had no idea what that was. None. I mean, all the movies about directing just show a guy sitting in a chair saying action. What the hell is the job? It's not just that. What is it?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just saying that also the imposter syndrome was kicking in strong because the people I knew who were directors had been film majors, had degrees in film, are some of the people I have most respected in the industry, obviously, are the directors. So when you say director, that's a heavy title for little old me. I mean, it's true. I learned to write screenplays by getting hired, right? And by working with Steve but I couldn't make the leap that I could learn to direct by directing.
And when she
And
said short subject, though, she
yeah,
shrank it down to a small enough chunk that we could look at each other and kind of say, maybe we could do that. And it was, thank God for Giselle. I mean,
I'm
by
telling
shrinking it down,
you.
it gave us a chance to understand what is the picture. It's
Like
like,
we had never pitched that idea to her. Like we could have thought of that ourselves, maybe, but as far as we know, there was no ROI, return of investment, attached to a short necessarily, and it didn't dawn on us to say to a major, production company, hey, what if you finance a short film I mean, it didn't even cross our minds. It didn't cross our minds. She came up with the whole idea using a Japanese company called Samansa, which is a streamer. You can actually join their membership. It's like the Netflix of short films. They've got Oscar-nominated films. They've got all kinds of shorts from all over the world, in many languages. And we had no idea that world existed. We So what Steve and I figured out, and this is where I think it's relevant to all of you, we're not trying to turn you into directors necessarily, unless that's something you think you might want to do. We'll show you the rocks for that. It's more about a continuation of the theme that we don't quite yet know exactly who we are yet. it had not dawned on us that just our life experience, our years of relationships, our emotional resilience, our ability to conduct ourselves in a pitch and a meeting, and on and on and on. There's a list of maybe 10, 12 other things that we've accumulated over the years that were exactly the skills we needed to be directors. And there's some equivalent to that in your lives where you have sets of skills you've learned, especially if you're older, over time. Time and wisdom. I mean, I think wisdom and being adults is a big reason we've succeeded so far with this venture. Because when problems arise, well, guess what? We've been through problems before. We know how to weather problems. And we know that the thing you do when you confront a problem is you have to come up with solutions. And that's what directing is on set all day long. Problem solving. Okay, done that. I definitely know how to problem solve. Oh, we have to talk to the investors in Japan in a meeting today. They're concerned about the shoot date because they haven't given us the money yet, so they want to push our shoot date back. Hell no, we don't want to push our shoot date back. We found an SFX supervisor the same day of that meeting because that would have been a big empty slot in our deck if we didn't have an FX supervisor. We found her the morning of that evening meeting in Japan
We
and presented
found,
that deck.
I mean, look, the fact that he was Japanese was not determinative in any way. But if you
Now
don't,
that's our cinematographer you're talking
I
about.
know, I'm aware of that too.
Oh, okay, okay.
But when we met we interviewed our director for director of photography, our cinematographer, Kenzan Takahashi. I recognized that he both had skills that were out of the box, and he was Japanese, which meant that our Japanese investors were going to be able to say, "Oh, Americans hiring Japanese guy. Maybe these black people know what they're doing." I mean,
It was,
I
and
hate
he
to say.
100%, he 100% won that job. He killed that job, but he was the first
That's right.
person we interviewed from a list because we were intrigued by the fact that he was Japanese American and we were curious. I thought maybe he would have a Japanese horror sensibility, which would have been amazing. Not so much.
Well,
He's a horror fan,
also
but
think about something. In terms of the magic formula, we found Kinson because of Kwan, a development executive that we trusted with, was it My Soul to Keep?
yeah, my soul to keep.
This was
Still
My
working
Soul
on
to
it.
Keep. We trusted him, even though there were bigger companies that offered, more, money.
Yeah.
But we thought Kwan actually got us. And even though that project did not work out, the connection with Kwan led to Kenzan Takahashi. Hiring Kenzan Takahashi meant that the way our feature, our short looked was fantastic. His understanding, his mind. I'm telling you, this
He's
guy
young,
is the
but
real thing.
yeah,
He's
he's
the
exact.
real thing. But it was serendipitous. If you catch the serendipity there, that the magic formula is about you take what the Stoics say: forget the things you cannot control. What are the things you can control, and do those things with all your heart. We did that. We made the moves we could, and there was one slam door after another slam door after another slam door, and we knocked until our knuckles were bloody, and we just curl up in a pill bug shape and cry sometimes because it hurts so much. And how do we generate our faith? How do we keep getting back up? And this is that process was one of the things that actually brought us closer together, because we found out that if we loved each other, we could get through this. The belief was we could get through anything. So
So yeah,
go ahead, finish everything you're saying, sweetheart.
I don't know. I just feel like the skills, it's the invisible skills that we're just sort of carrying around casually. We didn't know were a part. We didn't know those were rocks we could put in the water and walk across to direct. These are just skills we have, people skills, organizational skills, a deadline ethic. I mean, bam, 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 bam. Those were the things that have helped us succeed thus far. We have a lot to learn, don't get me wrong, but I am speaking with some more confidence. Like people used to say, oh, well, don't just say you're making a short film, say you're making a film and it's true. And I'm going to stop saying short film if I can. I
Please
did
do.
choke. I choked a little bit in front of some other directors last night, but producers last night. But it's such a huge undertaking, and you have to hire the same department heads, well, those that you can afford anyway. We knew the ones we would have been hiring, could we afford them? So we hired the ones that we could
But do
afford.
you realize, though, that when you made your short film Lost with your iPhone, with
Yeah,
just
just for
you wrote it,
fun.
you directed it, you acted in it, and you posted it on YouTube, you, in essence, did everything that is necessary to make a feature film
Well,
in
except for
recent
hiring
form.
other people. Yeah, yeah. I learned and I
You
edited it myself
you
because I
don't
think,
need to hire other people. You
right.
want to hire other people. You want to spin off the individual skills, but in order to do that, you had to know that the skills exist. You have to have some sort of a standard. Who do you hire? How can you figure out what this is, and how you can measure whether or not somebody is good? What I'm trying to say here is that we stumbled into a situation where instead of teaching you and talking about us, the projects that we're working on and the things that we're doing, we accidentally established rapport with you because we've got a couple of years of these talking about our projects, our books, and working in television and so
That's the
forth.
Life Writing Podcast. Check it out, y'all.
Life, life writing
Lifewritingpodcast.com.
podcast, and Fire Dance, and this. We've talked about a path from being totally on the outside of Hollywood or New York and writing short stories and then novels and then screenplays and then making a little short film and then making more short films and bringing in people to get investors and starting to work with more people. And, how do you create connections in Hollywood? The two things you have to do: deepen your skills and broaden your network.
Go to Japan, apparently.
That we found the rocks in the river without even realizing we were looking to cross into that land. But if you look at our background, we're storytellers. We're not just writers. We're writers, we're teachers, we're parents, we're storytellers and have been all our lives. And Hollywood is just another place to tell stories. It's the most important one on the planet in some very important metrics. So now, instead of us talking to you about things we've already done, this transforms. As of this Independence Day, this transforms into your witnessing our march towards getting a feature motion picture. Those of you interested in writing, all the skills of writing stories and books and screenplays and so forth and so on are clearly included. But also, if you will just back up a step, we're talking about how to master any project, how to
Yeah.
apply these tools to any project of
And
any size,
how
especially
to
the ones that terrify you.
yeah, how to take the skills you already have and transform yourself into something you never even imagined you could be, or something you'd been afraid to pursue because it's not demystified. Now, directing a movie has been so demystified to me. Not to say that we're not still learning every day. I still struggle to remember what some of the technical names are for people who do jobs. I have a lot to learn in that direction. It's pathetic in some ways, but at the same time, I'm not at all intimidated now by the idea of directing a feature because it would be taking the exact same steps we just took to make this short. That's what people mean when they say there's no difference. You have to hire a cinematographer, you have to hire an editor. We had a stunt coordinator. We had a stunt coordinator for this little short. We
We
would
had an
have to hire a
on-set
stunt
medic.
coordinator. We had an onset, yes, we had a medic. So all those things, now we know. Now we know what to do. Now we know how
So
pre-production
look,
works.
I would say that we don't know how to do it. Unless you take a step back and say the way to do it is to recognize that you don't know, but you can learn. What we
Yeah, and you can,
understand is the process. It's not the structure of it. It's the process. How do you prepare yourself? If our thought is next summer, let's say June the 1st, it's July the 1st, we're going to film the feature. Between now and then, if you divide up the task of learning how to direct into 100 or 1,000 different parts, all we have to do is take three eat 3 parts of that every day, or take 1 step every day. You divide that up. I know that. So it's like, make sure that I'm studying for an hour a day. An hour a day, I'm going to study production, pre-production, post-production. I'm going to listen to Steven Spielberg and Jordan Peele, my role models for how to do this, and believe that that if I spend that time, it's like knowing to take that first bite of the elephant. It's like saying, I don't see how to get all the way there, but I can see my next step. I can see the next step. And if I take the next step, the step after that will reveal itself. So it's having the faith, and you break things down. What Giselle did was she broke it down small enough that we could believe that, in 100 days, we could do this. That by learning 1% per day, I can get all the way to the skills that would enable us to do this. I can have faith in that. I do not have faith that I can do this right now.
Oh,
But
but
I
we
have
we
faith
got
that
you.
if I apply the lessons, the very things that we have been working with
We
other
have a
people.
special guest who's just signing in. Director Ernest Dickerson is in the house.
Oh my God, that's, I don't know what to say other than, if anytime he wants to raise his hand and talk about any of this, you are front and center on this, Ernest. Ernest is, oh God, let me just put him up here. Oh my God, this is wonderful.
Yeah, sorry, Ernest. You thought you were just
Hello.
gonna sneak in here. I don't. Okay.
So
Good.
proud of you
I'm gonna
guys.
put your
Oh
IMDb up.
God, we're so
Oh, thank
proud.
you.
We're so grateful, and I mean humbly grateful for the people like you who are operating at the top of your game and have really made it in the sense of you're actually in that space. For I mean, I know you have your struggles and the things that you want to do, and that's just life. But you're
Yeah.
over the horizon. You were over the horizon, and what you said to us was, "This is the path." And you listened to what our plans were, and you said, "That's not silly. Okay, if you can do that, it was up to us to do it." But you were able to help us define the path between where we were and where you are. And then it was up to us to see if we could walk it. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for being one of the people who kind of said, no, you're not crazy. This can be learned. It can be done.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm happy to see that you guys were bitten by the bug because
We are so
I think
bitten.
I think this is just the first of many for you.
Oh,
Yes.
we
Yeah.
And
appreciate
that's,
you saying that.
I'm sure,
That
that's,
you know.
man, that's
I want to push this short into a 3 picture deal.
Hmm.
That's what I want. We've already have some ideas about what those three, there'd be the keeper, reformatory, and a book, by Tenerife, and a book called Charisma that I did would be books that we feel like they contain the level of integration of story that makes it really us, really from our hearts. But they also have the potential to go wide in terms of if they're done properly. So, given that hope, then we can say in 1,000 days from now, we could have done all three of these movies. And
Yeah.
so it's like planning 1,000 days. In 100 days, we could be in pre-production on our feature. In 10 days, we could have a rough assembly that we could show family and friends of our short. So seeing that, it's like this gives us confidence in taking just the next step. Tomorrow I will reassess and push things back. But dear God, did anybody, who was your role model? Who gave you the sense that you could accomplish, that you could do this? Where did you get that notion?
Uh, that's the way I was raised by my mom.
to be a
And
director?
well, just in life,
Mm,
just to just not go after what I wanted to do. Even though even though she tried to talk me into going into medical school, like most mothers.
right.
Sure.
But when I decided to go to film school, um, she basically said, "Oh my God, you're going to school for a couple more years? Okay." Um, And she didn't stand in my way. She and my uncle, who was the first man to put a camera in my hands,
Okay, that's it.
and who really turned me on to film.
Was your
Getting
uncle a director, a
No, he
photographer?
was a jazz musician. He was a
Hmm.
jazz musician, musical scholar.
Okay,
And
so was he married? Did he have a family?
yeah, he did. He did. He you know, he's my mother's brother, my mother's younger brother. And he was a world traveler. He was a Muslim, El Hajj Dawood Abdul Rahman Haroun. He made his pilgrimage to Mecca twice. Was a world traveler. Um, and he was like my cool uncle. He was, the uncle who had an apartment in Chinatown in New York City, right underneath the
Hmm.
Manhattan Bridge, who had just been all over the world, whose girlfriend was Anna Marie Horsford when I was in high school. He was dating Anna Marie Horsford, who's now a very established actress. And we used to sit up and look at movies late at night, and he was the guy that started dabbling in still photography and helped me make the connection that movies were photographed. And between his beautiful still photographs that he did in black and white and what I saw in some movies that really blew me away, that I always wondered why they looked that way. And we were just watching one movie one night, and he just happened to mention, damn, this photography is amazing. And it just made me, oh, movies are photographed. And I started making the correlation between photography and stills and photography and motion pictures, that basically one is just standing still, the other is 24 frames at a second. And but the basic process of exposure is still the same. And so that started my journey. And then, I grew up seeing movies. For me, Sundays, we always went to see the latest movie in the theater. So, movies was always big in my life. I was always interested in it as a craft. It took me a while to like really start to think of it as a profession
Hmm.
because I grew up in a housing project in Newark, New Jersey, and all my friends were, just, growing up, we were just trying to decide what was the next dance move, when was Sly and the Family Stone's new album coming out,
Ah,
you know,
That
that
is
kind
the
of stuff.
question.
right,
And
right on.
what was going to be the latest party. And so, you know, I took a move into architecture for my undergrad, but while I was at Howard, I was exposed to so many different things that made me realize what my true love was, which was film.
I love that you're mentioning that because the question in my mind was how do you make the leap from movies or moving images? It's a form of photography. This is something I love. To this is something I believe I can pursue and do. And Howard, you just said it. You
Mhm.
went to an HBCU
Yeah.
and you were filled up with your own potential.
Yeah, I took classes with Haile Jurema,
Mm,
and
a
and
great
he,
record.
and even till this day, he's still an influence. And so I learned still photography. I learned how to print color, but then I also took classes in the first classes in cinematography, which was basically teaching you the technology of the camera, how to use a camera, how to basically how to be a good AC. And I was,
Assistant cameraman.
yeah, this
We
was
know
this.
that now, so
Sorry about that, but for the rest of the audience,
Don't. I just hope you came on here. I hope we're not abusing your hospitality by getting asking you to talk about these things.
no,
You
man, not at all. I'm
okay,
happy
good.
okay?
to share it. I'm happy to
Fantastic.
share it.
This is what an unexpected pleasure. We did not expect
Wow.
Ernest in any way, and I hope there are a couple things I wanted to say before Ernest goes on. One is the strength of your life will be the strength of your associations to a gigantic degree. Work on those things. But the other thing is I hope that you will take all the success things we've been talking about in terms of dealing with stress and reading your goals and this and this and this, and listen to what Ernest is saying about how he did this and extract from his story the way he used these principles consciously or unconsciously. These are the principles that people who make it to their destination use to varying degrees of awareness of it. But this is nobody invented these patterns. People observed them. So this is a gift, and I hope you guys are taking notes. Ernest, please continue.
Okay. Well, I um living in Washington D.C. for 8 years. Um, they had, a lot of the local movie theaters. They had great series. Great. The AFI had a great series called Films That Got Away,
Hmm.
and when I wound up getting a job, um, because ever since I was in high school, I always had part-time work after school. And so even when I'm in college, I'm trying to get a part-time job. So all the jobs that I wound up getting were photographic, working first for the Hilltop School newspaper. Then eventually I started doing medical photography, working in medical photography at the Howard University Medical School and Hospital. And the two other young brothers that were in the same department with me were movie fanatics. And we would go see, about 3, 4 nights a week, we'd go see movies. And saw some great double bills. They would have a Nicholas Rogue double bill of Don't Look Now and Walkabout. They would show uh, all these different retrospectives, Robert Altman retrospectives, and I saw so many movies. And we actually got in to see the very first screening of Star Wars when it opened up in
Whoa.
May of
Wow.
1977.
Whoa.
We were readers of Cinefantastique. We knew the book, we knew the movie was coming, and we got all of our work done early. All of our work done, all of our assignments done early, and left the photography department because we had a running photo section for the school and the hospital. And we went to the very first screen. We walked right in. We just walked right in the door, saw it, blew us away, loved it so much we stayed to see it a second time.
Hmm. I bet now that's right.
Then when we walked out the door, the line was around the block. So we had already seen it twice without having to stand in line for hours, you know. And but
Wow.
it was, sharing experiences with those guys and people in the art school and Howard University that really made me decide that um maybe I need to really see if I can be a filmmaker. And I applied to NYU and got in. Um and it was successful. Met Spike the first day, and I was a cinematography major. But no matter what your major is at NYU, you could still write, produce, and direct your own films.
Hmm.
So even
What
though,
was your first impression of Spike?
oh, young, eager, brash, you know, uh, ready to make movies. I mean, we first started joking, because he went to Morehouse and I went to Howard. And so we started teasing each other. I always teased him that, well, Howard always beat Morehouse's butt, at homecoming football games. So, we were we were joking with each other about that. But then our talk got down to what we were there for. The movies that we hoped to make if we could be successful in this business, in this art form. And honestly, one of our mutual dreams at that time was to do the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Hmm.
And and so, that was in like 1979, September of 1979. Little do we know that in 1992 we were actually able to do that. But but we weren't able to work together for the first season, for the first year because we were in two separate sections. And the lady who was my production instructor was a lady named Roberta Hodes, who was script supervisor for Ilya Kazan. She had been script supervisor on movies like On the Waterfront, Baby Doll, Face in the Crowd, all those movies. And she was a tough taskmaster, but at the end of the first year, she congratulated me and told me that I was a born filmmaker. And that gave me a tremendous boost. That gave me the confidence to keep carrying on, you know. Um, and uh, I was able to do it. And you just I met so many people when I was in college who let things prevent them from doing what they needed to do to advance themselves. And it was fear. A lot of times it was fear. My mother told me, no, listen, you come from one of the greatest cultures in the history of the world. Don't ever let anybody ever tell you that you cannot do what you want to do. And my
Amen.
uncle was the same way. My uncle was the same way. He went, he never let anybody ever tell him. And even though I encountered racism in high school, in a Catholic high school in Newark, New Jersey, an all boys school, um, I just kept that to my heart. And it's been my guiding light. And I said I don't want to be on my deathbed and say, damn, what if I had ever,
Mm,
maybe I should have done it. I
You
didn't
know,
want to be in that position.
I
yes. Yes to
I
all that.
often think that there are two possibilities. One is that I have the ability to reach my dreams, and the other is that I do not. And if I operate under the assumption that I do not, and at the moment of death, I get a revelation that I could have had it all if I'd only gone for it, that would feel like hell.
Hmm.
But if I make the assumption that I can, and I put everything I have into doing something that I love with all my heart, and I get a lot of the way there, and at the moment of death, I realize that I'd asked for too much. I still spent my life doing what I wanted to do, and I got to have hope and faith every day of my life. And I
Yeah.
would laugh as death came for me, and I would say, I know which I'd rather. I know I would rather hope for too much than have the chance that maybe there was something left inside me to give that I didn't have the courage to go for. I get that, and it can be really hard if you don't have a tribe of people who understand that and are going in the same direction as you. It can feel so lonely. I know that you had those times, and it sounds like it was the words of your mother and your uncle that sustained you in those times.
Yeah. It was my mom because my dad died when I was 8 years old.
Mm,
He had he had been in the Navy. He was he was like a 5 pack a day smoker in it, and that's what wound up killing him.
mm.
But my mother was a librarian. She had me reading from an early age. So I was always reading books. I used to get ribbed in school for I always had a book. I always had a book. I even got in trouble in the fifth grade for reading 1984.
Wow.
Oh,
Sister Jean David said I was committing the sin of pride by reading 1984, a book that was above my station, basically. That's basically,
whoa. What?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And I just kept on going. I didn't
He's
let
let it go though. It's not like he remembers
well,
her
yeah,
name,
it
where
hurt.
she lived. No.
It hurt because she called me out in front of the class,
That sucks.
but it didn't
That's
stop me from anything, you know. So I finished reading 1984. Then I think I went on to Brave New World, and I was always reading science fiction, started reading science fiction as a kid. And then in high school, I started reading more horror. So I've always been a reader of the of the fantastic,
Mhm.
fantastique, still to this day. So so I think that, that's always kind of affected all of my work. I mean, I kind of unconsciously, my first film, Juice, people have mentioned lately that Juice becomes a horror film. I never thought of it that way, but
Interesting.
but
Yeah.
but yeah, it kind of like went in that direction. And then Surviving the Game is a horror film.
Oh, absolutely.
I love
And
surviving the game.
Survive. Yeah, we used to watch Surviving the Game once a year. I mean, I mean, seriously.
That's my like jam.
and
That
then
is fantastic. Well,
so my reading definitely affected my attitude towards movies because whenever I read a book, I was always imagining it as a film. When I read Lord of the Rings in high school, I was imagining it as a live action film. Everybody said animation, it's got to be animation. No, do it as a live action film.
So when you finally saw Peter Jackson's version, did you see things that you felt like I would have done that differently? That would have been better.
You
Or
know,
did you
the
feel
thing
like,
is,
no, this guy pulled it off?
I think he pulled it up. Yeah, he did. He actually did the things that I would have done.
Superb.
It's so interesting because I think before I saw Lord of the Rings, the movie Babe came out, and it was photographed by the same guy that wound up doing the cinematography for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Um, and when I saw Babe, I said, "Wow, that would be a great look for Lord of the Rings." And then when he did Lord of the Rings and used some of his same lighting techniques in that, I thought it was great. He there were parts that he took out that he left out of the book that I would have left out. Tom Bombadil. I had trouble getting through that whole chapter of Tom Bombadil. Probably a lot of purists will hate me for saying this, but I'm kind of glad that it just kind of like it was a waste of space for me. So, but the rest of it, I was really impressed with it. And I even have the extended trilogy on 4K. And once a year, me and my sons look at it. I think it's a beautiful piece of work.
It is. It's magnificent. I mean, the what you have said, anybody, this recording will be on multiple platforms of this talk. I would strongly suggest that you guys read Think and Grow Rich and then take a look and see how those principles apply to the things that Ernest has told you about his life and how he set things up, how he researched, how he proceeded. Look, find a structure that is separate from the information so that you can organize that information in a way that your mind can understand it. For instance, I often relate things to what I call the magic formula. You find a model, somebody who's done it, who you can then say, okay, if I do these things in these steps, or a map, like I can go to film school and then I will make connections there and then we will start to work. There has to be actions. What were the consistent actions that you feel have made the most difference? You know people that you thought this person is really quote unquote
They're
talented,
gonna go
but they
places.
but they didn't do the work. What was the
Mhm.
work you were willing to do that others were not?
Homework. You know,
Mm.
um, you know, to do this work correctly, you gotta love it. You really have to love it so that when you're working, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like something that you have to do. It feels like you got to do it. I mean, for me, writing is extremely hard, and I procrastinate and I procrastinate and I procrastinate sometimes, but I finally do. But a lot of times when I'm procrastinating, I'm still marinating on an idea. Not being a writer, um, more visual. I'm always trying to come up with the right words to describe what I want to put into the scripts that I'm writing because I'm always trying to figure out how to use the camera as a writing tool. So
Mm.
how do I do that? What do I show? How do I show it? Um, and that takes a lot of homework. That takes a lot of research, um, searching for images, searching for inspiration. So I think, for me, that's it. You gotta stick to it. You gotta, you know, that has to be the one main thing that you wake up and you gotta do.
And
Um,
that was with us, Ernest, as a
yeah,
married couple working together, and you know this too because you work together also with your wife.
With
We had to
Rose, yeah.
almost with Ray, we almost had to make rules about okay, it's like almost midnight. We can't talk about the keeper right now, because yeah, sure
yeah,
enough, you're up late working on like trying to tweak the storyboards, you have an idea or a thought, and we would wake up talking about it, go to bed talking about it. Yeah, you're right. You have to love it.
yeah. Because and I'm sure it's the same way for any musician, any artist. They my favorite saying in life is that creation is a patient search.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's true. I spent a lot of time searching for inspiration, searching for a story that's going to inspire me. Searching, even when I'm working on a film in pre-production and trying to come up with the look of it, I'm always searching for photography, photographs, other movies, paintings, illustrations, anything that will help, jazz juice my brain. And and it's so true. You spend a lot of time searching, and uh, you gotta love it, because if you don't, and you're not going to do it, then you're not going to come up with anything that's really meaningful. I know I've run into a lot of people in this business who don't do homework,
Mm.
who and that has to come from a love of movies,
Yeah, I watch a movie every day. I mean, it's
yeah,
like at least one, just good movies, bad movies. I just want movies. I want the images. I want to feel what they're feeling. I want to see the colors and the shapes and the sounds. I want to see people fail. I want to see them succeed beyond my dreams. I stumbled out of Ryan Coogler's Sinners almost weeping because I thought I couldn't do anything that good. And then my next thought was, but I can get on that path and I
yeah,
can I
well,
can I can do the best I can do, and I don't know where I'm going to end up. That's my ego talking. My
yeah,
ego got wounded because that movie did so much
And,
to be inspired, to be humbled, but also to feel like I could do that. I
right,
watched one of Spielberg's early works, which was an episode of Columbo, and I looked at it and I said, "We could do this.
no
We
wonder
could do
Columbo's
this.
so good. Look, they had Steven Bochco and Steven Spielberg working on the pilot. How do you fail?
yeah,
It's I I understand what you're saying, man. That what gets you through is love.
yeah,
That sense of I would do this for free. I would pay people to let me do this. If I were a billionaire, I would pay them to let me do this. And when we were on the set, and I remembered, we were tired. It was late. And I remembered watching Quentin Tarantino directing, and he said, and I said to the group, it's good going, people. Just remember always, why do we do this? Because, and the crew answered back, because we love making movies. We were a tribe. That sense of being surrounded by other talented
yeah,
people who just want to know that they're like a tribe of gypsies that
yeah.
separate and then come back together, and they just want to know, what are we doing, where are we going, how can we make this moment in our lives meaningful? Do you have a vision? If I give you everything I have, will you take me someplace I will be proud to have gone?
And listen, on a shore, they're not getting paid that much. They really are not. It's half the people, it's a passion project. Some we got lucky because the industry's slow right now. But
Well, yeah, I
what,
mean, if your aim in life is to make a lot of money, going into filmmaking is not the best way to make a lot of money. There are easier
right?
ways to make a lot of money.
There sure
I'm
are.
sure, in other
Yeah.
professions. Going into
But
film is not it.
But
Yeah.
you know what one thing that really, really struck me is the dedication to story on a set. You've got this huge crew. Some of them are technicians. Many of them are technicians. Some of them are trained conductors, makeup artists, different kinds of artists, all in service of the word.
Yeah.
Because it says in the script, that's what we're going Yeah, it says right here, this is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes we had to argue back and say, no, that's not what we want to do now. But at one point, and as new directors, it was easy to feel very lost and swallowed inside this machinery, especially the first day. So there was a prop of a doll on the set. This is one of my proudest moments, Ernest. I just want to share it. There's a prop of a doll on the set, and we're always rushing to get this minor off the set because the star of our movie is a minor. A
Mm.
lot of the scenes were at night. So when someone brought the doll and said, shouldn't she be holding the doll? I know the story so well, and I know what every symbol means so well on that set. And I'm like, no, she's not holding the doll in this scene. That's not the point of the doll. The doll is not to give her comfort here. She only holds the doll when she feels safe. And it's the understanding the why of every angle, the why of every shot, the why of every piece of dialogue, and everyone being on that same page
Hmm.
is such an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's good. If you all the crews that I've ever worked with, if they feel that you're the real deal and you're really dedicated to what you want to do and you're honest and truthful and not bullshitting, they'll pitch in. They will definitely pitch in, because they love the work,
Mm,
Yes.
and they want to work with real filmmakers, people that have a really good idea of what they want to do. Um, I've walked on in doing television, I've walked on a lot of sets where, they said, oh God, the last director had no idea what he or she wanted to do. And it was
mm,
like chaos, and then, the crew likes to have a leader that knows the story better than they do and can tell them what to do.
mm.
And who's receptive to ideas, because,
Yes.
you want your crew to feel like they can contribute also. And, all you got to do is figure, hey, if their ideas are good, it's only going to make me look better.
We
So,
took plenty of ideas.
yeah.
Oh my God.
But they
Yeah,
like being
Yeah.
part of the
absolutely.
process. They like being part
Yeah.
of the process.
Yeah.
We had a problem at one point. There was a lack of communication. I take total responsibility for that. If I was to look at a major flaw, one flaw was not keeping proper track of time. We have to execute this by this moment, this by this time, so forth. I could have been much better at that. The other is having clear lines of communication and responsibility, understanding each department head and what are they doing, and so that I meet with each of them every morning and find out what they're thinking and what needs to be done and give marching orders like a general to the troops. As a result of one of those things being broken, we ended up not having, or there was the threat, the very real possibility that a particular effect sequence would not be finished by the time we needed to shoot.
Our
And
minor out on the last day of the shoot,
Hmm.
that's right. So
down to
what
literally the
happened
minute.
was everyone in that department, including people who had no responsibility, pitched in. It's like it was amazing. The way they just said, "Oh, this
They
needs to be
just
done more
got it
rapidly."
done.
They
They got
just
it
got
done.
it done.
Hmm.
And that sense of pitching in that you were just talking about was absolutely real. They weren't there for the money. They were there because they love making movies, and we love making movies. And I remember when Rosenfeld over at Monkey Paw said something interesting to us. He said that a lot of showrunners and directors and producers want those positions for the money or the fame or the name on the door, the power.
Yeah.
Power.
That
Yeah.
that a potential advantage that we had was that we want to tell stories.
Hmm.
We want the skills and the power in service to telling stories that we believe in with all our hearts. That's he considered that to be the healthier place to come from. It actually has soul. It has meaning. It has. Why am I there? For the paycheck? No, because I'm dying to get this story out. Because I've been trying for decades to get my stories onto the screen, and I keep running into barrier after barrier after barrier until finally some part of us said, "Patience, my ass! I'm gonna kill something." It's like, let me make this work, and it's a different world, Ernest. And you know, what what words of wisdom do you have for new directors like us?
Well, one thing I was going to say is that your shoot was 3 days.
Yeah, 3 days with one prep day.
In the future, usually it's usually the first 4 to 5 days that are the rockiest in any production because everybody's finding their footing. Everybody's finding their balance. Everybody's trying to get the rhythm of the production. So you guys, it was rough for you because it was such a short shoot and you didn't have time to really find your balance. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen when you're able to come up with a 2 week shoot or a week or even a week shoot, because those first few days are really the toughest. They're the
Mm,
scariest.
mm.
Um, so, but you survived it, and it's only going to make you stronger. you know,
Yeah, that first day
you
was
know,
chaos,
yeah,
but we handled it, and things were getting better. I mean, it was we could
Yeah,
feel that we were getting better at this. So, in all likelihood, our next shoot is going to be like 6 weeks, for a feature. So
if we're lucky.
it's bring take a look at the team that we've got here. Most of them, the vast majority of them, performed outside our expectations. I want to bring my team with me.
Hmm.
And second, pre get the lines of communication much clearer and responsibility much clearer, and push that pre-production until we know exactly every shot that we want. We did pretty much this time. I mean, we did. Kinson helped us hugely,
Oh yeah, we
but
have a great
we could
team.
do even better, and we're
He's
going to do
making
even better.
He's making
Hmm.
us look good. He's making us look real good. I can't wait to share footage with you, really with all of you,
Yeah.
but it's not quite time yet. But as soon
Yeah.
as our executives saw like the little 4-minute teaser our editor put together, which is just a sustained scene between our
Yes.
two leads, no
Don't be
cuts,
too
just
surprised if you get an email from us
it's
later.
just a sustained scene. I mean, I thought it
I'm looking
was
forward to it.
I thought it was great, but I'm biased. She wanted to send it to Samantha immediately. It's like, oh, we need to send this to Samantha to see this teaser, which it's just a rough cut, like a teaser from a rough cut. It hasn't been color treated. I mean, nothing. It's temp music. It's just, a placeholder. But our actors are so strong, and it really comes through, and some unexpected aspects of the set because we had changed the location at the last minute because we didn't have time literally to do new camera setups.
Mm.
So they're like, why don't we just stay here, where we were shooting last night because this is easier. And so we did it. And the unexpected consequence of that is a very absorbing, immersive scene between them rather than a more interrupted scene between
Hmm.
them. And it's strong, Ernest. I can't wait for you to see it. I can't wait for all of you to see it. Um, anyway, I'm going to unspotlight myself. And I don't know if Ernest has more he wants to say or what
Well,
Steve
I'm
has
just
to
dying to
do.
see what you guys have done because you know, I've, I've read the original script. I've got the graphic novel right back there.
Oh yeah.
We, we will definitely shoot you a little something later on today. But I kind of am curious.
You
Do
will
any of the
recognize
people
it.
who are here have questions for Ernest? We've got him here by some miracle. We honestly did not expect this, but let's roll with this. If you have, raise your hands if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to find other things to ask him. And I will do that. But let's see. Is there anybody who has a question? I'm going to remove the spotlight here for just a second to see whether or not we have anybody raising their hands. Nobody seems to be raising their hands, so I'm going
It's
to.
I
Oh,
think
wait a
Angela,
minute.
yeah,
Wait a
Angela
yeah,
minute.
Angela,
Dalton.
because I was
Angela
about to
Dalton.
say, I know there's
And
at least one filmmaker here, so I better see this hand go up. Okay.
I'm like,
Angela.
I am not going to miss this moment. Mr. Dickinson, thank you so much for your time and all the gems that you dropped. I am wondering, I am a inspiring screenplay writer,
Mm.
and I'm wondering from a director's point of view, what insights would you give to a screenwriter, especially given the state of the industry today, the threat of AI, just keeping in the craft and keeping your head up in making something happen.
Uh, that's what you got to do. Screenwriting is tough. There's nothing scarier than that blank page. Um,
Yes.
you got to find what works for you. But you got to stick to it. I mean, it's you just got to hang in there. Now AI, I don't think so far AI has not been able to produce anything of any worth. All it
Mm-hmm.
can do, I think, the guy that did Black Mirror, he experimented with a Chat GBT doing a screenplay or doing a script for the show. And all it was able to do was just mash it together, all the best moments of all the best episodes, and put it all together. And he said it was a piece of shit. Excuse my French.
You're
And
in good
so,
company.
so um, I think there's a certain films will always need humans to guide them. AI is a tool, but you've got to tell it what to do. I'm fighting with AI now to produce some conceptual images for projects that I'm trying to get made, and just trying to tell it what to do and how to do it is a struggle,
Mm-hmm.
but you just got to keep at it. You just got to keep at it. And And if you've got a great story idea that you just can't put down, just keep on going. There's that point early in the writing when it doesn't look like it's ever going to end, but then you finally get to that final page, and then you got to rewrite
Yes.
because screenplays, they say the best screenplays are always rewritten instead of written. So, but I think, to me, that the hardest thing is just write, just let it out, just get it on the page first, and then rewrite it later.
Okay.
Don't judge what you're doing as you're going through it. Just get it on the page, then go back and relook at it and look at it again and do it in the rewrites. Um, that way, I think that's probably the most successful way to just get your ideas out there, get it on the page, so you can kind of like sit back and look at it and be a little bit more analytical about it and say, oh, wait a minute, maybe I need to do this instead. Maybe I can change this into this. So,
How long do you like, after you finish a first draft, how long do you like to wait before you start the second draft? To give yourself that distance.
I kind of go into it right away. Well, first of all, I wait for my wife to type them up because I write longhand on yellow legal pad.
Wow.
For me, it's pen and ink and whiteout. And I can't think and type at the same time. And I noticed that when I was working with Spike, he worked the same way. I read an article with Tarantino. He writes the same way that he,
Clive Barker writes the same way. A lot of people do. That's
yeah.
great. That's a great piece of advice. I'm gonna have to try that.
And I don't know, for some reason, I had a hand on, and on a pen on the paper. That seems to work better for me. It's instead of me on a typewriter.
Well, you learned to write using pen and paper. That was
Yeah,
your earliest experience as writing. So that's a direct connection to your child self. It's like when you're writing with paper, you're 8 years old again.
yeah. Well, also I
But
read someplace an article that really helped me out that said that, by writing longhand, pen and, on paper, that's actually very productive for the brain. The brain, for some reason, it really works better that way. I forget the exact details of it, but it read me, when I read it, I said, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to keep this up.
I've
But
read
it's,
that, I've seen that too. And part of it
yeah,
is that it makes your brain connect to what you're actually doing versus on a computer, your brain could actually kind of detach and
yeah,
not be connected to what you're actually thinking about, what you're actually saying, what you're actually doing. So
yeah.
therefore, longhand is like plugging you into your
It's,
work.
it's more immersive for you. It's
Yeah.
more immersive for your brain to actually write it out by longhand. And
Great.
it's the same way with storyboards. I draw my own storyboards. So
Oh, wow.
for me, that's, you know, my way of living the film before we make it.
Absolutely. Thank you
Fantastic.
so
Angela, do you
much.
have
Thank
any
you.
other questions?
Oh, I will be here all day. Why did you do that?
Well, we have him for another 23 minutes, I think. So
Well,
I
I
just
want to
want,
save some time
yeah,
for
please.
others. I think the only other thing that I would ask is, so oh my gosh, so many questions. Starting out, you've got like the independent track, kind of what Tananarive and Steven are doing right now versus the Hollywood track. But if you're only just focusing in as being a writer, which path would you think is the there's no such thing as easier, but just like if you're starting out, would you say independent? Would you say Hollywood in terms of getting that real world experience?
I would try to do independent. I
Okay.
mean, and I don't even consider myself a writer because that's not, I only write because there are certain ideas that I want to get out, and the only way they're going to get out is to write them down, you know. I'd love to have a writer do the writing for me, but I've never been in that kind of situation. And the only thing that I've ever written that's ever gotten produced was Juice, and that
Mhm.
was writing with Gerard Brown, who also went to Howard University with. So um, I have a lot of unproduced screenplays that, that I'm trying to produce. But that's because um sometimes, I've also gotten screenplays that I needed to rewrite. There's one that I had to do an extensive rewrite on that my wife and I are trying to produce now, and a film that I was actually able to direct out of the country in the island of Curacao. I had to rewrite that script, but the basic idea was there. But writing from scratch, the idea from scratch, Juice was the only one I was able to do. But I would say independent is the way to do it because, um, if you're dealing with a studio, the way studios are now, what they want to see, what they think the world wants in terms of cinema might not be what you want to make,
Mm,
you know? And I really think the future is independent film.
beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I love how you just say like juice, like it's just like not a classic that every Black woman or kid knows. Like Juice is a classic. That was a beautiful, beautiful movie. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much.
That's great. So, what is the question you've never been asked that you've always wished somebody would ask you about this process?
Ooh. Um, what's the most important thing, I guess? What's the
What
most
is the most
important?
important thing? Let me
Imagination.
ask.
Imagination. You got to have imagination.
And
Yeah.
tell me how you use your imagination on your shoots, especially if you can think of some particular time when imagination saved your hash.
Ever since I was a kid, ever since I was reading, when I was reading novels as a child, I always had a movie projector playing in my head. I always translated what I was reading into visuals. Every book that I ever read, I always had an idea of what it should almost look like as a movie. When I read, oh gosh, I remember one of a memorable Christmas present my mother gave me when I was 9 years old. She gave me the book Dracula,
Hmm.
Bram Stoker's Dracula. I read it. I read it during Christmas vacation when my mother was going to some parties. She was going out to parties, so leaving me at home by myself at night
Reading Dracula.
reading Dracula at home in my apartment at night. And some of the imagery in it is just haunted me, and scared the living daylights out of me. But I always saw it visually. I remember there's a scene where one of the characters is describing Dracula standing in a in a wood at night with a ground fog, and there were like the eyes of rats, and I just visualized that. I just saw that in my head. And then everything else that I ever read, I always visualized it. And so I, I just have a tendency to do that. For me, words become images. Um, and that's just something that I have. And I think the more films that I see, the older I get, the more films that I see from different filmmakers. I guess it's a library of images that just grows in my head that's there. And sometimes when I'm reading, something, maybe I'll have images of what it was like. I just got through reading an interesting book by a filmmaker, Richard Flesher, who did 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the original Disney
For
version.
Disney.
He did a lot of movies like Soylent Green and stuff. He was a film director. Soylent Green. His last, he was just describing working with Edward G. Robinson on that, and how Edward Robinson was dying when he knew he was dying from cancer when he was making that movie. As a matter of fact, his death scene in the movie was his last scene he ever acted in as a person. And knowing that movie, and I could just visualize working with Eddie Robinson on set. So I've always been able to visualize whatever I've read and put it into pictures. And way my imagination works.
I have got to ask you, what is the project? What's your dream project? The one that, if the stars aligned for you to get to make this project, and that ended up being the last project you ever did in your life, you would feel complete.
Oh God, I got a bunch of them.
Talk to us about it a little bit.
Oh gosh. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Um, well, I mean, there's some scripts that we have that we're trying to get made now. Um, one of them, we started a kick campaign to with an anthology series called Noir is the New Black by it's a graphic novel stories by African American creators. And it's a story that my wife and I wrote that we have a script and basically we took the origin story in my story. It's um it's about a young lady who is kidnapped and drugged, wakes up in a little room in a basement. Her face is covered in bandages. Her whole head is covered in bandages. She doesn't know what happened. She sticks her finger underneath the bandages and comes out blood. And she realizes that her face has been removed and surgically removed. And she realizes that she's not the only person in this place, that there's someone next door to her cell that she's able to communicate with, who also seems to be a prisoner. Ultimately, when our young lady escapes, she gets out and she finds out that her face has been given to somebody else
That's a great premise.
and she wants it back.
Of course, that's a great premise.
And she'll do anything to get it back. And so, to hide the rawness of her face, she wears a Japanese no mask, NOH. That's why it's called
Yes.
No Face.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's a script that my wife and I wrote. It's the story that we're trying to get started in the Noir is the New Black graphic anthology series. Um, and we'll see. We'll see what's happening. It's the ultimate stolen identity.
Yeah, we're going to share that link over on YouTube,
Hmm.
where people have a chance to see this, and because I want to see that story. I want to see that movie.
It is on YouTube now. It is, but please, by all means, please put more out there. But it's yeah, we're trying to get that made. There's one of the things I like to do in horror. I've been reading a lot of older older stuff, original, older stuff from like the 1800s, early 19th century stuff, early 20th century stuff. And I'm fascinated with taking some older stories and putting them in new bottles. So I'm also reimagining some of the stories by Edgar Allan Poe set in 21st century America as it is becoming, as
Now,
it turned into.
which of his stories? I mean, were you talking? Could you visualize the Cask of Amontillado taking place in Manhattan? I mean, are you seeing what Tomb of Ligeia? I mean, which of those stories do you see as translating most elegantly or
Well,
powerfully?
the stories that are in the script are The Pit and the Pendulum, as it originally was, which is the story of a political prisoner who's being tortured by by an oppressive regime. Fall of the House of Usher, as a environmental environmental danger tale, a family that has poisoned the environment and has poisoned themselves. um, Telltale Heart,
Yes.
a man and his father who live in what is arguably Trump's America, um, and how the father suffers an injury and the son is just driven crazy by it.
I could see a Mask of the Red Death, in taking place amongst, in the house of a tech billionaire in the middle of a pandemic.
Well, that's my final story.
Something I knew there was
It
something
ends
like,
with that. It ends with that
yeah. Now you're talking.
because of the pandemic. So I have that. Uh, Lygia, which is a very eerie, ghostly love story. And the great thing about Poe is that these are all psychological horror stories. These are not supernatural.
No,
They're
they're
all
not.
psychological. They're all even Lygia, this ghost story. It's the main character is on drugs,
Yes.
and and William Wilson, where a man is haunted by his doppelganger, and the way I've structured the whole thing, it's an anthology film or series, the way that Pulp Fiction was an anthology, in that all the stories have characters that who are minor characters in one story who become major characters in another story. A minor character in The Telltale Heart becomes the major character in William Wilson.
Wonderful.
Minor character in Pit and the Pendulum becomes a major character in Fall of the House of Usher. But there's one main character who links them all, who lives through the whole thing.
The last question I want to ask you, I mean, really, people, what you got was an opportunity to listen in on the kinds of conversations we love to have with our friends at the dinner table. It just, it's such a blessing. If you could send a message in a bottle back to your 15-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Make movies now. Start making movies now. If I could tell myself, get started earlier, because I started late. It took me a while to find out what I really wanted to do, even though I had that love of it, even though I was in love with everything I found out about film was finding out about the process. I knew there was a way films were made. When I used to read the magazine Famous Monsters of Filmland,
Yes, for
that
acronym.
was that was one of the first magazines that got into how some of the movies were made,
Yes.
the process behind stop motion animation, how the effects were done for the original War of the Worlds, the 1953 version of War of the Worlds. And I was always fascinated with how movies were made. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to know how people made these movies. And but it took me a long time before I finally faced myself and said, man, this is really what you want to do. So maybe you need to do this. I was in my late 20s by the time I finally made that move. So I have a niece who is 17 years old. She's already made two films, and she's great. She's got, I'm jealous of her because she was able to get started so much earlier. So if I could send a bottle back, I would say, yo, man, you know what you really want to do. This is what you really want to do. So get started now.
Do you have any closing statement you'd like to make to our group before I let you go and I let everybody get into their 4th of July? And by the way, just once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all that you've offered us today. You stepped into the teacher role without being prompted or prepared, and you're magnificent.
I just wanted to hear more more stories about your experience. So I wasn't expecting to be uh so much into it. But
I will
but
tell
I'm
you,
but
or
I'm just
ask me
proud
a
of you guys.
question about it, and I will answer it. We will answer it. Ask us a question about it, because you might think of something that we didn't think to ask ourselves.
Well, I
You know,
just
or
well, the thing about making films is that um the unexpected is going to happen about 20 at least 20 25 times a day. And sometimes like hearing what was the thing that really threw you for a loop, what was
Okay, I'll tell you.
okay.
The biggest there was stuff along the way. There was stuff that had to do with our housing and and how we were going to get the family here and there and do this and that. But on set, it was that moment at which we did not have the full effect that we were looking for. And people were getting thrown for a loop. And I sat back and I thought about something. I thought about the fact of movie magic, that people don't see what they think they're seeing. They see, and I've been studying magic tricks just for the sake of fun. How do you pull this off? And magic is all about a few basic principles of the way the human mind works, and then you combine them in different ways to create these effects. And I realized that if we had half of the effect done right, because of the way our minds work, the audience would not have time in the sequence to notice that we didn't have the other half. They'd be so focused on what they did see that they'd never have time to blame us for what we didn't. And the instant I saw that and I realized that we could do this no matter what, the tension on the set dropped. We knew we could move forward, and then our effects department pulled off the miracle and delivered the other half. It was almost as if being ready with a solution makes it possible for miracles to happen. That was that moment for me. What about you? What was the moment for you? No, you're silent.
That's a way better story than the story I'm thinking of
I
in
doubt
terms of
that.
what threw me for a loop. I think I had a hard time, Ernest, just sort of picturing the logistics of the shoot because we produced a short film back in 2013 that someone else directed, my best friend directed. But she set up the catering. It was somebody in a farmhouse kitchen. This was going to be like 30 people on a location, and I couldn't even picture where they were going to be sitting. Like, I didn't understand they were going to set up tents, pull out tables. And because it was such a small set at a very tiny house, kind of a rough house, to be honest, that was the point. There was only one bathroom. And not only was there only one bathroom for all those people, but a lot of the time it wasn't available because in such a small space, either the camera's in there to shoot into the bedroom or you're shooting something in the living room and you can't cross the set. So that was the part, sort of the logistics of having so many people in one location, the swarm. There were different versions of that, like all throughout the shoot, where it was a little overwhelming how many people and all the moving pieces. But I think that was the biggest one. It's like, oh my gosh, I really have to go to the bathroom.
Along with that, one of the differences between writing a screenplay and writing a novel is the additional structure of the form of a screenplay. I have likened it to typing with chopsticks. In other words, the letters are still there, but to get to them, you have to balance. It's like, it's like trying to tap dance on stilts. The additional levels of technology and logistics and juggling psychologies and people arguing or people doing this or not doing that or whatever it is, and our cast and crew were great, was an additional level of complication. But what you had to do always is when someone asks you a question, you have to be able to connect it to the why. When Tananarive said about what is this camera angle? What is this symbol? Always, every single word, every image has to be in service to the beating heart of that story. And Tananarive kept that. I didn't feel like I ever got lost in the logistics of it, but I think she was closer to the heart because the generative idea of the story came from her childhood. So it's you only allow the situation to become complicated to the degree that you can maintain the thread between the kite that is up in the storms and the little boy, the little girl holding that kite on the ground. That and then if you do that right, I'm going to torture this metaphor to death because I like it. If you do it right, lightning will strike that kite and electrify that kid on
True.
the ground, except that it's a reciprocal electricity, that I'm sending it up with hope and love and ambition. And if I get it up there in the clouds and it's in the right way, maybe I can catch that lightning and it will stream down there and light me up, and I'll be able to share this with the world. That ability to take that generative impulse and then gain the technology and the knowledge to be able to express it to others without ever losing control of the kite. To be able to always remember the part of us that wanted to tell this story, and that the rest of it is the way we are doing it, that all of that has to be in service to the heart, so that when the director, or they're not the director, but the director of photography, or the actors, or the special effects people, or anyone else asks a question, you have the what, but it's the why that makes the difference. And if you
Yes.
your what and your why, the how, there are 1,000 ways to do to
Yeah,
get a how.
and
But
they'll
you
work
can never
forever.
forget your
That's
what and your why.
one thing our exec told us is, be careful about like letting them work too long to find a solution, because they'll keep trying.
Yeah.
They'll keep trying to find the how, unless you step in and say, you know what, instead of that, let's just do this simpler thing. But I have to give credit to our DP. That cinematographer is so important, not just on the set, but we spent hours with him in advance of the shoot, going through his 3D rendering program where he was blocking and lighting every shot.
Mm.
Like, we were deciding weeks before we started shooting, is this going to be handheld? Why is this going to be handheld? So when we got to the set, and yeah, handheld saves time because you don't have to do all these camera setups or whatever, but we had a specific reason, a specific mood we wanted to use handheld for.
Feeling.
So if someone suggests, well,
Yes.
why don't you do this handheld, or should we do that? We knew the reason we were doing it handheld or not. And it was very easy because of that preparation, though. I don't even understand how people just show up on a set and figure out how they're going to shoot. I'm sure maybe, well, you haven't done that because you're storyboarding to death and you're drawing your own storyboards. You know what you want to do. You probably know your lighting and the camera you want to use long before you show up at set. But apparently there are people who show up and figure it out,
On the
right?
set. Yeah, I've heard those stories. Yeah.
I would think
Oh.
those are called either geniuses or failures, with almost nothing in between.
Those are usually people that have, those are the folks that say, I can't make a movie in less than 90 days. You
Uh,
know, you know, because they show up and figure out what they're going to do.
yeah,
So,
that's
and I've
Uh,
heard there are those folks that are like that. There's some folks
oh.
that they can't do anything, in 90
Well,
days.
I can promise you that we want to take you and Rose to,
yeah,
for
we're gonna
lunch
have
and
a
dinner,
lunch
and,
soon.
and
Yeah.
continue this download.
Thank
But
you for
it's time
this.
for us to, I always do kind of the same ritual here at this point. First of all, to thank you very, very much. I'm going to take us off of Spotlight and remove Spotlight. And I would like everybody to unmute yourselves and to say goodbye, and to thank Ernest Dickerson for
Thank
giving
you,
us an hour and
Ernest.
a half of
Thank
his
you, Ernest. I
time.
had a wonderful
Thank
time listening to
you.
you.
Thank you, Ernest.
Thank you,
Okay, cool.
Ernest.
Yeah, it was great.
I hope
Beautiful.
everybody's able to have a nice fourth, a reasonable
Absolutely.
fourth.
Hey,
This
you
is my
just made
idea of
it
a
nice
wonderful
for
fourth.
A
yeah.
wonderful, wonderful fourth. You've helped us begin it. And I'd like to close this, as I always do, by asking people to, come over to lifewrite.com, our free site, where we can go deeper into all these questions and support you in your projects, whether you are a creator or you're just creating a life of joy and meaning to yourself. And I would like to say that the divinity within me salutes and acknowledges the divinity within each and every one of you. Namaste, people.
Bye
And I'll
bye,
see you next
everybody.
time.
Enjoy your
Everybody next
Thank
holiday,
you.
Thank
however you
you.
celebrate.
All right, guys.
Sinners is on Max.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Bye
See you
bye.
again.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Hi.
Bye-bye. Take
Ernest,
care.
you look for an email, Ernest.
Okay. All right. We'll be
Okay.
in touch.
Okay.
Bye-bye.